On the eve of AutoCon 1, Itential launched Torero, a community-based tool that automatically spawns execution environments for automations to run in.
Good morning, or afternoon, or what time is it? God, I don't even know anymore. So, my name is Peter Spragata. I am a recovering CLI jockey. I've been automating networks since 2012, and I'm very proud of that. And at the risk of getting, yelled off the stage before I even get started into my presentation, I will make one admission. Prior to my role at Itential, I was the lead architect and chief architect of Ansible, so everything that you hate about Ansible, I'm probably to blame for it at some point in my life. So I will say sorry right now. But today what I really want to talk about is transitioning from localized development to team-oriented development. And while I'm here with Itential, I'm not going to talk about Itential's products. We're going to talk about actually something that we launched just yesterday, a new community-based product, read free, that we're actually giving to the network automation community. It's something that was a thought that we had coming out of AutoCon 0 and really listening to everyone's presentations and a lot of the frustrations out there around operationalizing automation. So I want to introduce you to this concept and we'll kind of talk through it here a little bit. But to get started, I'm sure that everyone in this room can start to relate to a few things. First of all, I made an automation thing. Whether I wrote a playbook, whether I wrote a Python script, whether I wrote a Terraform plan, I made an automation thing. I'm very happy about it. I've worked very hard at making my automation thing. It works great on my laptop. I have no problems with it. I can run it against my infrastructure. No issues. Everything works. It's fantastic. I tried to share that automation thing with somebody, right? Because I'm very proud of what I built, and I want my teammates to start to use it. So I went ahead and I shared it, and guess what? It didn't work. As try as they might, it just did not work. So of course, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to start troubleshooting, right? I need the output of a lot of things. 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour goes by, and I'm really starting to question this automation thing at this point, right? Because although I built this, I haven't been able to really share it with the rest of my team. But what am I going to do, all right? I mean, it works on my laptop, it works on my machine. How do we get into more of a team-oriented operational model? The answer to that is, if you're looking at existing stacks today, is I start to build operational stacks for all of my tools, right? Whether it's AWX and Tower or the art of formerly known as Tower, whether it's buying a SaaS service, whether it's building my own bespoke solution. The bottom line is I'm starting to build vertical solutions for every type of automation that I want to run. And the reality is, let's all be honest, we all have some Python. We all have some Ansible. We all have some Terraform. We all have all kinds of different things. And to operationalize those across the organization, we get stuck in this challenge of, it's great that I've got the open source tool. It's great that I've learned how to use it. But in order for me to put it into my operational network so that my NOC can use it, so that my coworkers can use it, I have to start to build all of these vertical integrations. That comes with the added problem of now I've got to start to become a system admin, right? All of a sudden I'm drifting really far away from being a network engineer, right? Because now I'm stuck in the world of having to manage servers. I've got to manage dependencies. I've got to manage libraries. I've got to figure out how to get all of these things in sync. Oh yeah, I got to deal with upgrades. I got to deal with backups. Suddenly I'm not even a network engineer anymore. I'm actually stuck in this hell of having to manage systems. So with Torero, which is the product that we introduced, what we want to do is we want to get away from that paradigm, and we want to get back to just simply being an automation engineer. I want to be able to write code, commit it to my repo, and move on. And so what we're doing with Torero is we've built an application that will work directly with how you are building automations today. It works by being able to take code directly out of a repository, introspect that repository to understand the environment that is required for it to run, and it will actually dynamically build a runtime environment, execute the automation, and then throw the environment away, keeping all the results and returning them to you. And that's the premise for what we built with Torero. So, a few key things that come with Torero out of the box. That is, I can define my input schema. How many of us have had this challenge with, say, Ansible playbooks? And I wrote a playbook, and now I need input into that playbook. The problem is my users don't know what that input is, right? I've got the same problem when I try and transition then to, say, a Python script. With Torero, we can actually define, independent of the tool, an input schema, and then we validate that schema at runtime to make sure we've got the appropriate inputs to our script before we even try and run it. The next element of Torero is I don't care what I write my automation in. I can write some Python. I can write some Ansible. What we're looking at, though, is we're looking at unifying that operational model, right? So that we're always running it the same way, using the same tool to run it. I don't have to have a separate tool to run Ansible, a separate tool to run Python, a separate tool to run Terraform. I can do it all with what Torero is giving me. And then the big one is the dynamic environment creation, right? It's that ability to, if I'm writing code, and say I'm building a Python script to automate whatever, I might insert a set of requirements. And so I'm going to have a requirements.txt file in my repo. What Torero is smart enough to do is actually understand that, build out the environment with all libraries installed, and then execute my script, again, collecting all the data and throwing it back. As I iterate on my script, right, and as I start to make changes to my script, I'm eventually going to probably change my requirements. I'm going to add a new dependency. I'm going to upgrade one of my pinned versions. Torero is smart enough to say, okay, I've noticed that you've changed the environment. I need to recreate the environment before I actually run the automation again. And that's all coming with how Torero actually goes and executes how it actually goes off and executes the automations. One of the components, though, that was extremely important to me when we put this together, and this is something that I know even back from my days at Ansible was always a really big challenge, is how do I transition from doing localized development to a team-oriented development? So Torero comes as either, it's a single binary, but I can either run it in local mode, I can use it on my laptop, I can build all of my automations, I can get very comfortable with how things are running, or I can run it in server mode. No change in functionality, no change in how things work. It's just simply now I've got a centralized server that the team can start to coalesce around. So I can work offline, I can work on building out my automations, and when I'm happy with them, I transition them into server, and then I can actually run. At the end of the day, what we're doing is we really want automation engineers to stay completely focused on building automations. There's no huge value in building out massive operational stacks that you have to repeat for every single tool out there. And that's really what Torero is designed to solve the problem for. So as I said, Torero is actually a community-based product. So, and it's not actually part of the Itential product portfolio. It actually has its own website, torero.dev. And when I say community, what my hope with this is that, first of all, y'all go out and download and play with it, and hopefully y'all like it. More importantly is it's really going to be what this community wants out of the application and how we drive it forward. So we're committed to continuing the development of it, but it's really going to be from folks like you all to help us define where it goes next. We've got thoughts about where we want it to go, but at the end of the day, it's designed to be a tool that really the network automation community can coalesce around and use in their operational environment. So come to torero.dev, grab the binary, read the docs, sign up to get updates, and hopefully find big use out of it. And that's my pitch.
After introducing Torero, Peter Spragata and I sat down to expand on his Torero lightning talk.
Peter, why Torero? I mean, you explained it from the stage, but expand on that.
Yeah, so really what we're doing with Torero is we're trying to focus on a very underserved area of automation, and that is the operational layer. The challenge that we see, and we heard this very loud and clear at AutoCon 0, is that organizations need better tools that really focus on doing very specific things. And one of those is to solve some of the challenges at the operational layer.
So okay, operational layer, as in I'm running a Python script, but because of the libraries I need for my script to run, I need a special Python environment. That kind of operational stuff?
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? So it's this idea, and I talked a little bit in my presentation, but just to expand on it a bit more, it's that, I can get things working in my own environment, right? And I can hack away at it till everything's working exactly how I want it. But now I want to share it with you, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to try and run it, and it falls on its face. And after an hour of troubleshooting, it's like, okay, tell me how automation is saving me time now, right?
Right.
And that's really kind of the area that we're trying to focus on here.
Okay, so Torero then does what? It's going to build a Python environment for you. It's going to.
It is. So what it does very specifically is it builds dynamic execution environments based on the automation language you've chosen. So if I wrote something in Python, it'll build me a Python virtual environment based on what's checked into my repo. If I'm doing Ansible, it'll build not only the Python environment, but it'll also build out the Ansible environment, install all of my collections and so forth, all based on the information that's in my repo.
Dynamic. So information in the repo. I've got a YAML file defining that environment that it needs to read or something?
Yeah, you actually have it already, right? So if I sit down and write an Ansible playbook today, and I build my Ansible requirements.yaml file, I'm going to check that into my repo. I'm doing that just naturally anyway, right? So what we're doing is we're just saying, I'm going to read that when I pull your repo in, and therefore I can use that information to build the environment, so you don't have to build it up front.
And I don't need a special Torero requirements definition file.
That's correct.
Or anything. You're going to read what I've got and figure it out.
That's right. The whole idea behind Torero was I didn't want to put us in a situation where developers had to change their tooling or change the way that they're doing. We really wanted developers to stay focused on building automations the way they've always done it.
Okay, Peter, I want to have the open source conversation because Torero is community-based.
Correct.
It is not open source, however.
Correct.
But Itential, the company behind Torero, you're not going to monetize it.
That's right.
So I'm confused.
There's a lot going on there. There's a lot going on there. So, at Itential, we've always focused on building an orchestration play, and that is our product, and we continue to sell that. We saw the need for this, and we really wanted to develop the application and get it out to the community as quickly as we could. We do have plans for later this year to introduce a series of SaaS services that we will ultimately build on top of Torero, but Torero itself will continue to be developed by Itential, and we will continue to deliver new builds of it every 3 months.
Okay, so to clarify on the SaaS thing, that's not Torero as a SaaS. That is, you're going to deliver a SaaS service that happens to be using Torero under the covers.
That's correct. That's exactly right. It'll be an Itential branded product as part of our corporate offering.
Okay, but it's a free tool. It is. So what do you mean by community-based then?
So our hope with this is that the community will find value in it. We believe that there's a lot of value in trying to unify that operational layer. So we're hoping to see a lot of community uptake on it. Because we're building a SaaS application on top of it, we had to iterate very, very quickly in the initial stages of Torero. We are not opposed to open sourcing in the future if the community does see that there's value in it and they would like to see it open sourced. It's really just a matter of, at the moment, because we want to get our SaaS application out, we just needed to focus on getting it out there and getting some usage behind it.
Okay. So an operational question then.
Yes.
In my workflow, I want to stand up an environment using Torero so that other people in my work group can run an automation that I've built.
Yes.
Do I, as a one-off, invoke that? Does it become part of my pipeline? Does it? How do you see it fitting in?
Yeah, it's going to fit in a couple of different ways, and it's initially going to start by running it in local mode, where I can work on my local system and I can work on building out all the pieces I need. But
local mode on my laptop.
On your laptop, exactly.
Okay.
And that way I can kind of get tested on, get familiar with it, and get it working the way I want it. But when I'm ready to start to have the team coalesce around a Torero server, we can actually launch Torero into server mode. And server mode is when the team's going to start to come together around a Torero server or a number of Torero servers for actually launching against production infrastructure. So this truly does then become my application or my automation gateway into my production infrastructure. As a matter of fact, I think that most organizations are going to come to this realization that an automation gateway is exactly the piece that they're missing as they try and productize and operationalize their automation solutions.
Automation gateway. Okay, but Torero fundamentally is just spinning up an application execution environment for some automation artifact that I've created.
Yep.
So you're making it sound like it's a really big thing.
So over some of the subsequent releases here, and where you're going to see Torero go, and especially in the next releases where we'll be introducing the ability to take Torero from being kind of an individual tool that a team will coalesce around to an entire framework that I can then implement in my infrastructure. So we'll be able to start to build out a highly resilient architecture with Torero and run our automations through it so that we've got a way to communicate with the production infrastructure, but I've got all those enterprise controls I need around logging, around security, et cetera.
Okay, okay, I got it. So it will be an enterprise class tool then, auditing and RBAC and
That's
whatever
correct.
else Torero is going to need for 'em. Going back to server mode then, you said a few things. Initially when you said server mode, my brain said a server that I run Torero on, and then you said server or multiple servers, and then you said highly resilient. So explain to me what the capabilities of Torero are in server mode.
Yeah, so the way Torero is architected, in the initial release, everything is running in one instance. I can run in a container, I can run in a VM, however I decide. But starting in the next release, we'll be able to detach the execution node from the controller node, and then the execution nodes will scale horizontally in your infrastructure. So I can put up as many execution nodes as I need to manage my environment. Taking it even further down the road is I'll actually start to have knobs that I can control to force automation jobs to run on specific automation or execution nodes. So I could have, say, my East Coast and my West Coast execution environments that I can push jobs to because they're close to my devices, but I still have a centralized controller. And that's where Torero is going to, that's where how you're going to see Torero evolve.
It's somewhat of a Kubernetes model.
It is.
It's not exactly like that. It's not a cluster in the same sense,
Correct.
but it feels like that.
Conceptually, it's the same
controller nodes
idea.
and I've got worker nodes.
That's right.
I've got an execution node that is driven by a controller node. So Torero then becomes the foundation or the platform upon which I'm running some sort of an automation job.
That's right.
If I need to scale it big, I can have a bunch of servers there. The controller, I assume, is going to know how many Torero servers are out there and do what? Spin up a job depending on who's got the most resources?
There's going to be different ways that it can tweak it. We will have the ability, you can just simply, basic round robin, you can do it weighted, or we'll have an affinity concept, like I said, where you can actually assign jobs to certain geographic areas. So like I said, if I got some execution nodes on the West Coast, some on the East Coast, and I can force jobs onto those runner nodes or those execution nodes, because that's what's going to be closest to my nodes that I'm actually trying to automate.
Okay. So I see the whole hierarchical scheme. I see where security rights and permissions are going to come into this, because you don't want anybody just to be able to upend and run some kind of an automation job.
Correct.
All right. So then the last question, Peter, I think. Future. Where else? I mean, this sounds like a fairly robust architecture already, but where are we going next with Torero?
Yeah, so that's where we're really looking for the community involvement. We've got some very specific ideas, and everything is published on torero.dev, so anyone can go out and take a look at and see what's coming. But we're really hoping to see the NAF community and really just anyone who's looking at operationalizing network automation to really help us drive where this roadmap needs to go. We're going to build SaaS services on top of it. That's going to be all part of our portfolio offering. But this layer is something we are committed to continuing to deliver. And we're really looking for that community involvement to help us, decide where we really want it to go next.
To download Torero and add it to your network automation toolkit, visit torero.dev.